everyone, my name is Jonathan and I'm from Conquest in Yukon, Oklahoma, and today I am interviewing Professor Brad Scott at Carlos Machado Academy in Carrollton, Texas. And we're going to start with some simple questions and we're going to flow from there. Alright, so what got you started in Jiu Jitsu?
I was working in nightclubs, running nightclub security. Buddy of mine, messing around at the end of the night. At the time, I was probably about 315 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
He was sitting at around about 180, 185.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, the only thing you need is stand up, like most of us guys. And started messing around, and he put me in a guillotine choke. And when he put me in the choke, I was like, what is this? And I felt like, getting a little fuzzy, and I was like, man, it's getting dark. And I was like, it's already dark. And I tapped, and I was like, try to do that again. So he ended up trying to do it again, and he put me in it. But this time I picked him up and I put him on a table, but I was like, I got to learn that. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of how the introduction started. For me, it was a need. I figured since I'm doing a job at the time where I was bodyguarding and doing nightclub security, mm-hmm. I was like, if this is what's out here, I got to learn it as well. So that's kind of started my journey.
Okay. And so how long have you been training for?
Oh, man. Coming up on, I started late 2002, early 2003. Mm-hmm. So what is that? Almost 18 years? Mm-hmm. And for me, it was kind of like, it was kind of part of a job for me. But at the same time, I enjoyed it so much. It was kind of fun getting out there, getting after it, pushing. And of course, way I grew up, I grew up like watching wrestling and stuff. And then I was boxing, and, I kind of grew up in a rough area. So in that rough area, everybody was always boxing. So kind of mixing it up, it was like, oh man, this is fun. This is awesome. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I kind of got going, and, that's kind of started my interest in it.
Okay. And so where did you start training at?
So I originally started off at Moeller's back in the day.
Where's that at?
Moeller's is in Irving. Okay. Started off with him because that's where the buddy of mine was, training at. And he'd always told me about another good friend of mine by the name of Marcus Hicks. Mm-hmm. And they were training partners. And so that started the journey. He was telling me about it and then got me interested. So I started off there. I was there for at least... I think I ended up leaving there, I want to say, in 2007. Mm-hmm. For different reasons, I ended up leaving there. And then, of course, from there, I went over and I started training with a really good wrestler by the name of Yusuf. Mm-hmm. Yusuf was a former national Olympian in Iran, and so was his brother Molson. So I ended up going there because that's where a lot of guys were as well. So, of course, back in the day, there weren't too many options for where you wanted to go if you wanted to get really good, especially here in the area. Mm-hmm. So went there, everybody was there. Ended up working at the time, I'm still working in nightclubs, ended up meeting another friend, a longtime friend. His name was Taryn Douglas. Me and him ended up kind of looking at each other one night. I was like, I do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. He was a brown, I think he was purple or just got his brown at the time. And me and him started training together. And it, as I found out, he was ranked under Master Carlos Machado. So me and him were training together on a regular. He ends up telling me he wants to open up a school under Master Machado. And so I started coming over here, and then that's how I officially, so I was with Yusuf about, I'd say about 2.5 years. I was teaching the boxing and stuff there. And then, Taryn offers me the position to be an assistant instructor with him. Mm-hmm. And, around that same time, received my purple belt at that time. And, as they say, the rest is history. Ended up being with Master Machado and been with him ever since 2007, 2008.
Okay. So where all have you traveled and trained at?
Traveling wise, for the most part, in the general area. I've been doing a lot more traveling over the later years, mm-hmm. Over the more recent years. I really didn't start getting traveling until, say, probably about like 2010. Mm-hmm. But I've taught at a bunch of different places over the time. I've traveled, let me see, was it I think it was 2017 or 2018. We went to Iceland. We went out there, went over there to Mjolnir. With Master Machado, it was kind of like a family slash company trip. I went over there, trained with a bunch of those guys with the Globetrotters group there. I've been into Canada multiple times. A good friend of mine by the name of Perry Bateson, he's up there in Vancouver. Love Vancouver. Vancouver, if I ever leave this place, I'm going to Vancouver.
Okay.
Second would be Iceland. It was really awesome being up there. So I've been there. Been up and down the East Coast. Been up and down there. I'm originally from Florida, but I've been here the majority of my life. Mm-hmm. So the majority of jiu-jitsu traveling has been, here. I've, of course, went into Canada. Went up and down the Northeast, checking out a bunch of different schools and, training and grappling there. But yeah, of course, COVID and all that, I was looking to sit there and kind of get on a group kind of like trip and start, doing seminars and heading over into Europe. But of course that, I think, changed not only myself, but, a bunch of the guys. We have a bunch of affiliates that are in Australia. Wanted to go there. Couldn't go there, of course, when all the borders shut down and everything. So for the future, I'd like to travel more. But for right now, those are pretty much the areas I've been.
Okay. And so what practitioners have and do currently inspire your game?
Of course, currently, I would have to say, right off the top, of course, all of Master Machado's brothers. All of them, of course, when I got my black belt, all, 5 of them ended up signing off on my black belt. Mm-hmm. So it was because at one point or another, I trained with each of them, some of them more than others. So each of them had their own different game. But of course, coming up, I would study Joey Assis. I liked his game, his heel hook game. He sat there and played a lot of heel hooks. And then, of course, I studied Marcelo Garcia. I studied a lot of him. Cyborg, I watched his stuff. And, let me see who else. There's a bunch of the legendary guys. If I saw anybody that could, stay on top, for a long period of time, that's always who I would study. If, even if they're not as well known, it would be, for me, was anybody can rise to the top quick, but it's how long can you stay on top? So anybody that could sit there and stay relevant for a long period of time, I've always been a student of.
Okay. So what is something you think every beginner should know?
Every beginner should know that you probably don't know as much as what you think you know. I think that's pretty much it. Every beginner needs to know that you're probably not as good as what you think. And as the old adage goes, styles make fights. Just because you're successful against another big guy and you're a big guy doesn't mean that you're going to be successful against every big guy. Because not all big guys play the same style game. Some big guys, of course, they'll sit there and look to smash. Other big guys are a little bit more, they're a little bit more flexible. They'll sit there and play a more intricate game. So, or you can be the exact opposite. It could be a small guy that gives you the most trouble. Of course, me being longer limbed, that's always been kind of like, for the longest, I was kind of like my Achilles heel. Little small guys, they play within my length. So, I think that's probably one of the biggest things is like Master Machado always says. He always says, train smart, stay humble. And that's the biggest thing. When you're coming in new to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think it's super important that you come in with a realization that you're probably not as good as what you think. You may have a lot of natural gifts, but if somebody's got the techniques, it's tough to overcome.
Absolutely. So, your story with your black belt, and you got that from, you said, rolling with all the brothers, and you had to get.
So you're asking me. You're asking me a story. So
yeah, come on. Details.
All right. So the details that I ended up having to do. So I was purple belt. I'll start with purple belt because that's when I kind of started with Master Machado. He ended up, him and of course Taryn Douglas ended up giving me my purple belt. Well, comes around time, my hashtag is always training. Because for me, it's always been more than just a sport. It was actually how I was defending myself. On any given night, I always had to be to defend myself. So I was always training.
Mm-hmm.
But a great coach, a great instructor knows how to motivate you. And for me, it was always be, tell me I can't, or, give me a challenge and I'll look to overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
So Master Machado, we had a couple rankings, and I thought I was due for my rank. So, like any, presumptuous young guy, I go up to him, I'm like, sir, what do I need to do to get to my brown belt? And the man looks me in my eye, stares at me, just like I'm staring into the camera, and he goes, Mr. Brad, you tap all the brown belts around town and win some tournaments. I'll give you your brown belt. So by God, that lit a fire underneath me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was literally running around town trying to look for everybody I possibly could. If they were a high rank, I was looking to tap them. I didn't care how many times they tapped me. I was like, I'm going to tap them, because I wanted to create such a stir that he would want to give me my brown belt.
Mm-hmm.
So time goes after, it's about 2 years. I'm sitting there constantly. I'm training. And he finally gives me my brown belt one day. Just tosses on the mat, old school Brazilian way. Just kind of, toss the tea on the mat. And I'm like, yes, okay. The new journey starts. Okay, I'm going to get to my black belt. So a couple years go by. And right when I started to feel like I was really in my brown belt, I go to him and I say, sir, what are you looking for me to get to my black belt? You know what that man told me? Look at me, just like I'm looking into the camera. And he tells me again, Mr. Brad, when you tap all the black belts around town. So, you know what I did? I'm hard-headed, I'm stubborn. I went looking for every black belt I could possibly find to grapple with and to try to tap.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept doing it. And so real good friend of mine by the name of Rob Abels, he's under Marcelo Garcia currently, but he, at the time, he had just, him and Master Machado had kind of gone different ways a little bit, but him and Master Machado were good friends still.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to Master Machado, because people were starting to mumble, Brad needs to get his black belt. He goes to him, he goes, Brad needs his black belt. And Master Machado was like, let me see. Mm-hmm. So he put me through the old school gauntlet. He would sit there, we'd have people coming in, he would have different people coming in for his seminars, for his camps, and he would sit there and put me up against them. And boy, I was sitting there trying to get everybody. And then finally, when it was to his liking, he's like, him and his brothers used to do a 5 brothers camp. Mm-hmm. He goes, I'm going to give you a black belt. So him and his brothers ended up giving me my black belt. So of course, I trained with his brothers and him, but of course, Master Machado was the most intricate in that aspect, of course, because he's here. Mm-hmm. So he ends up giving me my black belt. And then for me, I've always, if somebody signs off on me, if somebody co-signs for me, mm-hmm. It's always been my thing that if you're vouching for me, then I'm going to do my darndest to sit there and make sure that I represent you in a fine way. So, of course, the lineage of the old guard was you were a black belt every day. You weren't a black belt because you got a black belt yesterday, but you're only as good as the last time you touched the mat. So, therefore, ever since then, just been pushing.
And that's why you train every day.
Every day.
Stay sharp.
Can't let it go. Can't sit there and take the foot off the gas.
Absolutely. So, what are some things that you like to do outside of jiu-jitsu? What are some things you like to do in your spare time?
Spare time? What's that? Yeah, guys, it's only training. Train. But for like fun, what do I like to do? I'm really into cars, really into fast cars. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing like with, I think it's the rush, just like with grappling, it's the rush, fast cars. I used to sit there and do a lot of racing with my car. I'd go to Texas Motor Speedway and do the drag and brag, or I'd go down to, Ferris, and there's a couple drag strips out there, and I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't, look for the occasional somebody looking at me on the highway and wanting to, so, it's almost like you would sit there. It's almost like, of course, you're on the mat, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of like, you're kind of sitting on the mat and look over and somebody else is sitting there like, yo, want to go? Want to go? It's like slap hands. You're like, yo, all right. So it's essentially the same thing whenever you're in the cars, you know?
Right.
It's like you look over, and, you know, you see the guy kind of look over at you and
Pushing on the gas
yeah, you know, and so, you know, that's always been me. Anything that's competitive. You know, I used to love to play basketball and play football and stuff like that, but the problem is unfortunately age gets us all in. You know, I got little legs and they don't support all that jumping up and down. So
First of all, his legs may not be enormous, but let me tell you, they are made out of metal. He hurt my forearm when I was trying to do a straight ankle lock on him yesterday. I broke my own arm on it.
You know, carbon fiber guys, space edge alloy. Bird legs as they call it around here. So,
man.
So, you know, that's kind of like the major thing. I mean, you know what they say? They say that if you love what you do, you never work another day. I love teaching. I love training. I love pushing myself. I love pushing everybody else. I love sitting there feeling. So it's not really like I'm really working. So therefore, I'm always on the mat. You know, I got a bunch of different friends. I haven't, as the old saying goes, I've never met somebody I couldn't call a friend. You know, of course, there's, you know, different personalities and stuff, but I've always been a firm believer that everybody's got some good in them. You know, you never know what caused somebody to act a certain way or what caused somebody in their walk of life to feel like they wanted to do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or martial arts, period. So, you know, for me, you know, I've always kind of, a lot of people say I'm like the United Nations of Jiu Jitsu. You know, I try to sit there and, you know, unify everybody. I want everybody to come in and have a good time. You know, it doesn't just matter if it's here at this academy. I got friends, of course, you know, across the board. It doesn't have to be with this association, it can be other associations. If I've grappled with somebody and, you know, we talk, you know, my goal is to grow friends, to get more and more friends. I'm constantly looking to, you know, make new friends. You know, if I go somewhere and train, I'm going to sit there if I can, you know, be in contact because I want to go back up there and train with them again, especially if they're, you know, a good grappling match, you know, so that's always been me, you know, so besides training and cars, that's all my time.
So do you ever go shooting or anything?
No, always been scared of guns, always been scared of them, didn't trust them, you know, it's not that, you know, I'm against guns, you know, my thing is, if that's what your thing is, that's you. Thought about going hunting, but I don't know if I could choke out some of the animals that I'd be hunting. So therefore, I was like, I've rode a couple horses and the horses told me what to do. You know, it's like, I was like, let's go this way. And it was like, Mr. Ed, no, we're going this way. So I've always been a fan of trying to get outdoors and shoot guns and stuff, but it's on my list of things to do, but I'd have to # not always be training.
All right. So you said are you waiting on someone or student to come in right now?
Yeah, actually he's probably already here.
Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So, all right, everyone. I'm Jonathan from Conquest, and this is a beloved student of Professor Machado. This is Professor Brad Scott. Yep. Thank you so much again.
No, man, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for coming through. You know, had fun. Guys, he was trying to kill me. So just know, guys, just know. You know, he's got that white belt, but he's hunting black belts. So.
All right. Thank you, everyone.